My people, we're ready to mount up like an eagle. Stand and fight against evil. A system rigged and deceitful.
Welcome to the King Talks podcast, where we're all about truth, community, and discussing the things you care about because we care about you. Of course, I'm your host, Adam Coleman. Today we have with us the well-known journalist, author, Roland Martin joins us for an interview on the King Talks podcast. In our dialogue, we dive deep into the historical connection between black journalism and the advancement of the African American community. And on a more personal note, our guest also shares with us how this heritage of black journalism, along with his faith in Christ, serves as a basis and motivation for how he approaches his profession. Now, of course, we couldn't let Roland Martin go without getting his commentary on Donald Trump and the current state of politics. And as you might imagine, he had quite a bit to say. So stay tuned for all of that and more on this episode of the King Talks podcast.
My people, we're ready to mount up like an eagle. Stand and fight against evil. A system rigged and deceitful. King, you could hear it when I rhyme. I'm a king, renewed in my mind. I'm a king, I got a different bloodline. I'm a king, jump, I am a king. I'm a king.
Roland Martin, how you doing there, brother?
I'm doing great. Just sitting in DC traffic. Just finished doing MSNBC, and so head to the crib.
I heard that, man. I heard that. Well, I tell you what, man. I know you're a busy guy. I mean, between running a successful news show and celebrate the Astros' victory, the World Series, I'm sure your plate is pretty full right
Yes, Lord. Well, so you gotta understand. I grew up, born and raised in Houston. I was one of the, they had the Houston Astros buddy club when I was a kid, and so, man, you talk about finally being able to see that season win. So it was great for the city, great for fans and my family. Happy about it.
Got you. Now the real test, man, is were you a Houston Oilers fan? That's
oh yeah.
Like the real test.
No. You got no. You understand? I'm born and raised in Houston. I'm born and raised in Houston.
Right.
We cheered for all Houston teams, so Oilers, Rockets. I certainly was sad to see them go, but we didn't care about Bud Adams, but we certainly loved the Houston Oilers.
Gotcha.
So yep, absolutely. So
you about that life?
He's Oilers fan.
That's all right. That's all right. All right, man. Let me throw this at you. Recently, I came across this quotation from Ida B. Wells that I'd like to get your reaction to. Now, of course, for our listeners out there, Ida B. Wells was an African-American journalist and activist who believed her calling was to report on and expose the lynchings and white supremacist terrorism going on in the Old South. Now, she said, quote, "The way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them." Now, this got me thinking about journalism and the black struggle. I wanted to ask you this question. How would you describe the unique role that black journalism has played in relation to American politics and the advancement of the black community?
Oh, well, I mean, first of all, it's played a huge role. I mean, when you look at the fact that we're celebrating this year the 190th anniversary of the nation's first black newspaper, Freedom's Journal, which was launched in New York in 1827. In the lead editorial of the newspaper, they wrote this: "We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us." And so it's important for us to remember that. So what that means is that in this space, in terms of what's happening in media, we need those of us speaking for ourselves, telling our truth. That is hard for some people to have to deal with. And I think when you look at what that means, when you look at the North Star, Frederick Douglass's newspaper, the value of that as well, critically important when you begin to look at other voices of power who were using the pen to speak truth. And so a lot of times people forget that. When you look at, of course, in 1905, Robert Abbott founding the Chicago Defender, when you look at the Atlanta Daily World, when you look at the Pittsburgh Courier, you would not have Jackie Robinson in Major League Baseball were it not for Wendell Smith and Sam Lacey using the power of their pen to expose what was happening in Major League Baseball. In fact, today also is the anniversary of the first issue of The Guardian, which was published by William Monroe Trotter, who was a leading black journalist. In fact, when he was actually he was so aggressive when it came to speaking truth to power, he was actually thrown out of the White House in a meeting with the president. I believe it was Wilson. So again, when you think about that, a few years ago on PBS, there was a documentary called Soldiers Without Swords, and that was the history of the black press in America that really detailed the importance of black newspapers. When you think about the Double V campaign, Double V campaign, that was led by black newspapers where they wanted victory abroad and victory at home. They were arguing, let's defeat fascism, let's defeat Nazism, let's defeat Jim Crow here as well. You can go through his long line in terms of the importance of black media. When Emmett Till was lynched, August 28, 1955, there were witnesses who were scared to death of their lives. There was a tri-state defender and Chicago defender that actually found those witnesses that actually were involved, in essence, helping the prosecution try to convict those who did wrong. You think about the Civil Rights Movement, Black Freedom Movement. When you think about those fearless brothers and sisters who were reporting on the front lines, you have, of course, a Pulitzer Prize-winning book. Gene Roberts was a co-author called The Race Beat, and it details the reporting of the Civil Rights Movement and the role the black press played before the New York Times showed up, before Newsweek and Time showed up, before the Land Journal-Constitution. It was these black newspapers in Arkansas, in Mississippi, in Alabama, who were the leading voices. I think as you move forward, obviously, once you get past 1970, and the reason 1970 is critical to understand why that was a turning point for local black news is because, look, the first 20-odd Africans arrived in America in August of 1619. You go through 244 years of slavery. You go through 12 years for Reconstruction. Then, of course, you then go through nearly 100 years of Jim Crow. And I tell people all the time, if you use 1970 as the marker, we were technically fully free Americans. And what I mean by that, is now you're past the assassination of King. Now you're talking about the Fair Housing Act being signed into law. Then you have Nixon's election, the first wave of African Americans in corporate America. If you use 1970 as your marker, when African Americans were technically fully free Americans, then that means we've only been fully free for 47 years. Now, after 1970, a shift happened. We began to move other places, for argument's sake, live where we want to live, work where we want to work. So the institutions that were able to contain us, to still mold us and shape us and build us, were beginning to wane. You begin to see really strong black journalists, of course, who were talented, but who cannot get hired in mainstream outlets, begin to get snapped up if the black papers cannot afford to keep them. Same thing in black radio. And so you begin to see black media suffer. Now, granted, you still had some strong voices going through the 70s and the 80s, the Amsterdam News, Chicago papers begin to change. But really, the makeup, the voice of black America began to be altered in the beginning of the 1970s, and now you go through the 80s. So where do we stand today? You have fewer black radio stations than you had in a long time. You only have 2 or 3 black-owned television stations in the country. Your black newspapers are not these powerful organs and vehicles because many of them, frankly, were falling back in time, but not keeping it up with digital media. And I've run 3 black newspapers, and I've been at the forefront of that. Then, of course, you see black television, BET, black-owned. They had Teen Summit. They had the various news shows. And then Bob Johnson chose to go totally entertainment. Then, of course, we come along to this week, Monday, November 5th, actually November 4th, was the 4th anniversary of NewsOne Now, daily morning news show. I had the Sunday morning show for 4 years. And so what does it say? Here we are in 2017, and there's only one national daily television show speaking to the news and interests of African Americans. That is an issue. Sure, you have the Breakfast Club where they also air on Revolt, and they're dealing with some of the critical issues we face, but it's not a news show. But you still have that form. You have black websites, but you don't necessarily have black-owned websites. You have black-targeted websites. Essence Magazine is not owned by African Americans. BET is not owned by African Americans. And so where we stand is this, and this is, I think, what people need to understand. If you do not control your own message, then you cannot control your own narrative. We will rule the day. We will rule the day when we look up and realize that if we allow this thing to continue on its path where we don't have black ownership, what that means is that we will be asking somebody else to tell our story. That is a scary proposition.
Wow, man. Let me get with you on that. So, you just dropped the bomb right there. As a journalist, like when you look at situations like, let's make it concrete, like with Jemele Hill, for example, she's speaking out against particular things, and obviously, she really, caught hell for that. What would it look like then if you do have this, that ownership where we could have our own voice? Like, would it be as much of an issue with Jemele Hill, or would you just have the freedom to do what you need to do and then keep it moving like that?
Well, again, I think that first of all, it doesn't mean that you're not going to still have controversy. But remember, but you got to step back and say, okay, examine the Jemele Hill piece. So here's somebody who is a sportscaster, who is a sports journalist, who is speaking about Donald Trump, calling him a white supremacist on a social media platform. Remember, the blowback is also based upon how people are invested in that product. So white folks wouldn't be going after black folks working in black media, because then they don't. That's not properties that they can affect, because their leverage point is not going to impact us in the exact same way. ESPN is different. ABC or CBS or NBC are different. So they're able to. So they are looking at the mainstream piece there. That's what you're looking at. So the bottom line is, people are going to, if you are an African American working in a mainstream platform, they are looking at you differently than if you work in a black platform. Bottom line is, I say stuff every day on TV One that they pay no attention to because they don't watch. Yet if I was still on CNN, it would be different. So, for instance, I've seen some conservative websites when they have criticized something I said on TV One, they will put in a headline, former CNN contributor. First of all, I've been gone for CNN 4.5 years.
Right.
So why in the hell you still call me a former CNN person when I'm on TV One? You see, but they understand that by putting the former CNN contributor there, that is what's going to catch somebody's attention, because they know CNN, they know the brand, they don't know TV One. And so it's the same thing. So again, our criticism against Jemele is because they know the ESPN brand. If Jemele had a sports show with Michael Smith on TV One, trust me, that would not be the same reaction, because they would say, BT, whatever. But they are responding to the ESPN. That's what they're responding to.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. I just saw your post earlier today. I think it was something like, no self and no history. Like, do you bring this sort of awareness into how you approach your show? This historical aspect.
No, every day. If anybody who watches my show, listen to my podcast, listen to me on radio, even when I'm on ABC This Week, I'm a student of history, so therefore I'm trying to connect the dots. I'm not one who says, let's look at this thing in a vacuum as we somehow are totally separate. No, the historical parallels are critically important. So absolutely, we cannot forget the role that history plays in understanding where we are today.
Now it seems like there's another piece to this too. I mean, you've certainly been vocal about your faith in Christ, in public forums, and I think back to the exchange you had, the epic exchange with Richard Spencer, which you really took him to task about his views, obviously not aligning with Christian values. I think he said something to the effect of he's a cultural Christian, something like that. And you went in on him, man. You went in. But what would you say is the role that your faith in Christ plays in terms of how you approach politics?
Well, I think that there are some people who view faith as a part of who they are, as opposed to the essence of who they are. And what that means is, am I speaking about issues through my faith prism, or am I trying to set that thing aside? See, that's the difference right there. If you say faith is a part of who I am, that means that you can sit it on the shelf. You could place it somewhere else, as opposed to say, no, it is the essence of who I am. So therefore, it defines me. That's the difference. So I think when you bring that to the table, it changes sort of how people how you look at those issues.
I see. That's interesting. I mean, I'm kind of wondering about this too, because as an African American Christian, from that standpoint, I mean, to be honest, whether it's the Republicans or the Democrats, I mean, there seems to be areas where they both fall short. Like, how do you, work through that as far as, when neither side of the aisle fits the bill for where do you stand? Like, how do you work through those types of things?
Actually, because again, see, this is the thing that people have to remember. When an individual in politics is sworn in, they put their hand on the Bible, but they swear to uphold and protect the Constitution of the United States from enemies, foreign and domestic. So in my book, Listen to the Spirit Within, 50 Perspectives on Faith, I wrote a column on this. It's funny that the column dealt with Judge Roy Moore when he was a judge in Alabama, and he was fighting with him because he had this huge monument of the Ten Commandments in the building. So is he a man of faith? Yes, he is. But he is sworn to uphold and protect the Constitution. The Constitution prohibits those displays on public grounds. So I wrote the column where you have to make a decision, the Bible or the Constitution. If you are going to be in the public square, meaning a politician, yes, you can bring your faith, but your faith does not govern your actions. The Constitution does. That's why that's why we have this battle over the issue of birth control, offering it, this whole issue of do you pay for someone's abortion, this whole issue of, well, do I want to sell a cake to a gay couple? Do I want whatever it is? The video going around of the white guy saying he was not going to sell a gun to an African American because he simply judged him as going to bring it to the hood. See, and use it for illegal means. The point I'm making there is, once you are in that political space, you now are making political decisions that might be informed by your faith, but it ain't driven by your faith.
Yeah, I think that's where, it's kind of, the rubber meets the road. It can be, difficult for folks. I mean, for example, you have folks who would say, obviously, that Donald Trump is just a morally reprehensible person. But then on the other hand, they also believe that, abortion, for example, is morally reprehensible. So it becomes, how do you piece that out? Like, how do you kind of, determine which way you go? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you got to remember, though, again, we have something called situational ethics, situational faith, because what you'll find is folks will make these decisions, but they won't be honest about these decisions because they will excuse a Donald Trump, because you got to understand everything boils down to motive. So you got to ask, well, hold up, how are all these white evangelicals? How are they just running behind Trump? Because they did not care about him bragging about sexually assaulting women. What they care about is him appointing a conservative member of the Supreme Court who will rule against gay marriage, who will rule against the issue of abortion. You got to understand. This ain't a morals or values or principle conversation. They're about power. That's what you have here. And that's why they make their decisions. They hated Hillary Clinton so much that they could overlook the massive allegations against him and then say, well, he's a person of faith. He's sorry. We must extend grace and mercy. See, situational ethics. That's what you got going on.
Well, yeah. Now, for sure, I can say just from watching your show, I definitely have gotten the impression that you're not a fan of President Donald Trump.
Absolutely not.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, as a matter of fact, I mean, I know you mentioned, you declared war on him not too long ago. Like, what did you mean by that? You declared war on Donald Trump.
Well, I think if you listen to that stanza by Reverend Charles Jenkins in his song War, and he said, when you are under attack, you got to fight back. And so he goes through these things, and he ends it by saying, this means war. And that was his song. When people hear war, they don't understand. You have physical wars, you have military wars, you have mental wars, but then you have spiritual wars. The battle against Donald Trump is a spiritual war because the evil spirit, the narcissistic spirit, is what has enveloped America, and so America is at war with its soul, and so that's what I mean by war. We are at war against evil, against his narcissism, against all of that, because all of that could lead to us being destroyed because of that evil, and so you must. And see, people are even scared today to put things in evil terms, but that's exactly what you have to do, because when you see it's evil to do what you do when it comes to the Affordable Care Act, it's evil the actions folks have been taking.
Now I had to ask you, kind of maybe push back a little bit. Is this a war that the African American community can win if we're fighting alongside the Democratic Party? I mean, I asked that because,
but you're putting this in a political. See, again, though. See, a war against evil, you don't put that within the framework of fighting alongside Democratic Party. There are Republicans who disagree with Trump as well.
Sure.
See, that's what I'm saying. But the moment you put it through a political prism, then you change its force, its dynamic. The reality is here. Black people have been the only group that has loved America as America it is written on paper. I want you to let that marinate.
Okay.
No other group has forced America to try to be the nation it says it is on paper than what it actually is. That's
powerful.
The difference. So the issue is not that we're fighting with Democrats against Trump. No, we're fighting with people of conscience. And if they are Democrat, if they are Republican, if they are liberal, if they are conservative, does not matter, because you're fighting evil. And the other thing is, you got to understand, when you in a fight, bruh, you ain't sitting here checking somebody's ideology at the door. Well, let's see here. I have 10 issues of concern. Do we agree with those 10 issues? No, when you swinging, you focused on swinging. See, so the problem is, like liberals and conservatives have these purity tests. This ain't no time for purity tests. You need warriors on the battlefield.
Yeah. So with that, I mean, so what is the game plan? Like, what would you say in this Trump era, right? What is the game plan for the Black community? Like, how do we fight that war, and how do we win it?
Well, first of all, now here's a piece. It's not a question of what's the game plan. We have been in America for 398 years. The game plan ain't changed in 398 years. So what's the goal? The goal is freedom. That's the goal. The goal ain't changed. It's freedom. What's the game plan? The same game plan we've been having for 398 years. And that is using every single facet to our advantage or to advance freedom. Economic, political, educational, take your pick. See, so the problem is
this is where you got to understand history. What the struggle we are in today ain't no different than Denmark Beasley. The struggle we're in today is no different from Frederick Douglass. It's no different from W.B. Du Bois. It's no different from Ethel Payne. It's no different from Martin Delany. It's no different from Booker T. Washington. It's no different from Phyllis Wheatley. It's no different from any of these folks. It's no different than James Baldwin. It's no different than Langston Hughes. It's no different than Ransby. It's no different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We are in the same. So the issue though is, do we in this generation have the same commitment and intestinal fortitude to see it through? See that's the real challenge. And so you're seeing it. So Black Lives Matter ain't new. That's simply the newest iteration of the Black experience. See, everybody y'all get all focused on Obama in 2008. Obama does not get elected in 2008 without what Reverend Jackson did in 1988.
Sure.
So they changed the Democratic Party rules. Reverend Jackson runs in 1988, and Ron Brown becomes the first African-American chair of the Democratic Party. Dr. Ron Walters and Harold Ickes and others, they changed the rules. Democrats used to have winner take all. If you apply the rules of 1988 to the 2008 election, Hillary Clinton blows Obama away. Why? She won Nevada, she won California, she won Texas, she won Ohio, she won Pennsylvania. Those are all the major states. So guess what? So you can't look at Obama in 2008 and ignore 1988. Because 1988 set up 2008. So just like how do we advance? Here we are two years away from the 400th anniversary of the Declaration, the first Africans arriving in this country. And so when you are fighting, what you're doing is your academics are involved, the media people are involved, your business people are involved, your political people are involved. They're all involved in making this happen. The real question is whether or not we are going to maximize and leverage our power, or are we going to leave it up to somebody else? It goes back to, again, narrative. Are you going to let somebody else tell your story? Are you going to let somebody else fund your community? Why did I create my hashtag HBCU Giving Day? Because we can't be in the position of having somebody else fund our university, and then they control the education of our kids.
Yeah, so in terms of making that concerted effort, in terms of really pooling our resources and just, different skill sets to bring about this sort of change, this victory that we need, like, what do you feel like is the major stumbling block to that? Like, why is it that we haven't woken up yet?
Well, but you're making a wrong assumption. That's wrong.
Okay.
We have woken up. The issue is not whether we're woke. The issue is whether or not we are reaching our full potential.
Okay.
No, black folks are woke. The question is, are we maximizing potential? Let me just use a sports analogy. Take a guy who has made it to the varsity squad in high school, or he's made it to the college team, or he made it to the pros. The question is, will he just go through the motions because he's made it? Or will he say, even though I am now at the top of my game, meaning I'm in the place at the top of my game, am I going to elevate my game to be considered one of the best ever? See, that's different. There are a lot of guys in the NBA, but not a lot of guys have LeBron's drive.
Sure, yeah.
Again, follow me here. There are a lot of guys in the NBA, but not a lot of guys have LeBron's drive. That dictates what the end result of your battle is going to be. LeBron is not trying to make the playoffs. He's trying to win rings. He ain't just satisfied getting there. It's the same thing. A lot of us are woke, but are we maximizing everything that is about us? That's the difference. And I think that's what we're not doing. We're not maximizing our votes. We're not maximizing our economic power. We're not maximizing our moral authority. That is the difference.
That's interesting. You mentioned that moral authority, and it kind of got me thinking about how when you look at the history of the civil rights movement, the abolitionist movement, there was always a theistic aspect to it. There was always the church was involved, and nowadays many people lob criticisms against the church for not stepping up to the plate. And as I kind of listen to you talk, and I think about the show where you have that panel discussion at Town Hall where you guys discuss all sorts of matters that concern the Black community, where do you think that the church fits in terms of playing a role in moving our community forward?
Well, here's the problem. Where we are today is the first time you've had a massive movement not led by the church. So the real challenge is, can the church follow when it's traditionally led? That's the difference. A lot of people have lost faith in the capacity of the church to lead, and that's because they have not fully followed through, and that's what's going on here. So the church has to make a decision as to, as I keep saying, I called out Paula White, will the church have the prophetic that is Prophet, or will be focused on Profit?
Right. Well, you might be that guy, man, to bring it back, because I heard you almost preach a sermon on the Breakfast Club the other day. So that might be your role, huh?
No. See, here's the difference. I let people come to me and they say, "Man, you got the anointing. The mark is on you. All I do is stop you in the streets. You should be in the pulpit." I said, "Nope. I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm right where I'm supposed to be." Years ago, I was in meditation and I'm praying, but I'm listening. And God said, "Bro, let me help you out. I got enough people in pulpits. I need you where you are." If you're rolling 5 minutes of radio, you will speak to more people than an average preacher will speak to in a decade, in a year. So, taking your earlier question, I bring my faith with me, and it comes out through what I say on radio, television, newspaper, the internet. See, that's my pulpit. The reason you got a bunch of crazy kids in school is because Christians are being sent to school and they ain't bringing their faith with them. Meaning they ain't having an impact on their fellow classmates because they scared. Follow what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
That's the difference. And so any place you go, that's your pulpit. Question is, who's using it? And most folks not.
Yeah, I often say I think one of the biggest mistakes, at least in the West, I think, is that people have begun to conceptualize the church as being a building or an institution rather than the people, that constitute that church. And when you understand that the church is the people, then I'm in church right now. I am the church. You see what I'm saying? Like everywhere that I go, I bring that with me. Even when I'm affecting change in regards to social matters. So I definitely feel what you're saying there. Let me switch gears here a little bit on you. Unfortunately, in light of recent events, and really just becoming a trend now, actually, it seems that mass shootings are becoming a disturbing fixture in American life. Why is it still so difficult to have the gun control conversation? What do you think about that?
Easy. It's because America is sadistic. America, just like race is in the DNA of America, violence and the gun is in the DNA of America. America, from day one, has been in love with its guns. So why are we shocked? See, again, this is where history comes in. America used the gun used the gun to steal this country from Native Americans. America used the gun to keep black folks in line during slavery. America used the gun to colonize the world. America used the gun to overthrow other countries. So why would we be shocked that American citizens would use the gun on their own? If you are born, if a nation was born out of soaked blood, why would we somehow think it would not continue that way? America has a sickness, and it is an addiction to guns. That's why we haven't done anything about it. If you don't admit it's a sickness, if you go to AA and you can't say I'm an alcoholic, maybe you ain't gonna never get to your 12 steps. America has never admitted that she is addicted to violence.
Wow. Strangely enough, I mean, this kind of just struck my attention. Like, strangely enough, it seems that when this debate does occur, it seems that evangelicals often fall, on the side of the kind of the pro-gun kind of side of the conversation. Why do you think that is?
Yes, because they are white conservatives. You keep saying evangelicals. You're leaving words out. They are not evangelicals. They are white conservative evangelicals.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Dr. King was an evangelical, but he wasn't a white conservative evangelical. He was an evangelical writing the letter from the Birmingham jail. He was writing to white clergy. That's why. You got to see, earlier you mentioned abolitionists. You got to remember, those were people of conscience, people of faith who were against slavery.
Sure.
But you had some other people who were obviously who were believing in Jesus and love, all that nonsense, but they believed in slavery. See, that's an oxymoron. They use the word against people. That's what they did. That was the game that they played, and they still playing it. And that's why you have white conservative evangelicals who will ignore anything Donald Trump does. But they will stand there and yell about morals and values. These are the same people who condemn Bill Clinton for sexual affairs, but will not condemn Donald Trump. That tells you they are concerned about profit and not being the prophetic. That's the difference.
That's deep. So how do you, I guess, how do you approach them? How do you engage individuals like that? Or do you feel like it's even worth our while?
You got to be willing
to do so.
No, it's always worth a while. But you got to be willing. You got to be willing to call them out. You see, that's the difference. Most folks are scared to call them out. That's the problem. They're scared to speak truth to power because they're scared of the blowback. I'm not. I can handle any blowback you want to. If you want to swing, let's swing.
Hey, well, roger that, man. Roger that. That's powerful, man. It's powerful. So, well, I'll tell you what, man. I definitely appreciate you coming on the show. I mean, you dropped some bombs on us that give us quite a bit to chew on, man. And I definitely appreciate what you do over there at NewsOne and NewsOne Now.
I appreciate it, Doc. They can always follow me. Of course. My digital site, allthat.tv, 7 a.m. every day on Eastern on NewsOne Now, TV1. Hit me on Snapchat, Instagram, and Twitter at Roland Martin. Also hit me on my Facebook fan page as well. So I'm easy to be reached.
I'm trying to get on that panel, man. How can I get on that panel, bro? Trying to give me a guest spot.
Let me know when you come to DC. But don't always ask for something if you can't handle it because it get heated.
Oh, trust, I'm with it, bro. I can get with it. You know what I'm saying?
You better be ready.
I'll be in DC tomorrow.
We don't slow down for anybody.
I heard that, man. Well, we're going to end the show here, man. First of all, I appreciate you and thanks for all you do. And of course, for the listeners out there, make sure you slide over to iTunes and subscribe to the King Talks podcast. Leave a comment, give us 5 stars, and subscribe to us on SoundCloud. And if you're interested in the King movement, definitely go over to kingmovement.com, where you can also join our online community with no commitment and at no cost to you. Until next time, strong in the Lord.
Yeah. I brought the Kings with me on this one. It's a movement. Yeah. I had a dream. I saw black slaves in 2018, pulling them big king with a crown in the middle, looking like tug of war. I guess they forgot the inheritance of the Lord, dying over streets when God gave him the earth. It's all in the Bible, just do your research. White man's religion, that's just fake news. The cross hit Africa for Europe even knew. This ain't black versus white, this is dark versus light. But racism might distract you from the Christ on sight. So here's the Visine, me and my team. Dark world, but we flipping on a high beam. King, K is for the knowledge, I is to inspire. N for the nurture, the G is to grow higher. Jesus lit the match, so we all on fire. You see your crown under your attire, know you looking at a fighter.
My people, we're ready for mountain.